Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 18, and I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have my buddy Lucas with me. Good morning, Lucas.
What's going on, man?
It is a good morning. We got some snow here in the DFW area.
Yeah, we do.
Not just like a little flurry, not ice, but like actual legit snow.
Yeah, it's sticking.
It's enough to where I wanted to take a picture this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the kids are going to be excited to play on that as well. And, it's crazy. There's probably a good amount of kids in this area that have never seen snow before.
So
Actually, that's not factual. Well, it could be if they're like 3 years old.
They've never seen like legit snow before.
Yeah.
Because like I was in 2010, I went to become a missionary in Canada, and I was there for a little under a year. I had my first like real snow experience, and it was overnight. A foot of snow dropped on the town. I've never seen anything like that before or like since that winter in Canada. Like even the stuff that, if you go to Colorado and go skiing, which a lot of people go to Colorado, New Mexico for like spring break and stuff, it's not the same. It's so many of the mountains at that point, it's like artificial snow.
That's crazy because, I grew up in Northern California, in Sacramento near the Sierra Nevadas. We go up to my grandparents, that my grandparents' property I was telling you about. Like, I think we talked about one of the episodes where I'd like stalk and play Navy SEALs and everything.
Yep.
Like we get snow up there occasionally,
right?
But it's right at the cusp. Their property was right at the cusp where the Sierra Nevadas would get snow, and to the point where if like the pass was closed, like literally they would shut down the pass. Like you couldn't go through the pass to get up to Lake Tahoe or Reno or anything like that. Or like Truckee, then like Tahoe, and then Reno. That was the order that would go as you're going up 80 or even 50. But my grandparents' exit was right at that where we're like, hey, this is the address that we're going to. Like, this is my grandparents. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Clipper Gap exit? Yeah. Okay, yep, you can go. Because they were always shutting it off right before Clipper Gap. Dang. But you could push past to Clipper Gap or Applegate exit to get to my grandparents off of 80. And, and then there's back ways you could get all the way up into the Nevadas. But, that was if you didn't have chains or four-wheel drive. Now, if you had chains, they would let you go through four-wheel drive. You could. But there's a few times where, like, unless you had an address that you had to get to, like, they would just shut it down. Like, nope, the pass is closed. Now, I will say Caltrans is incredible at what they do, getting that pass back open. I mean, that system that they have it's unreal. But so I grew up going and seeing that all the time. So anytime I've traveled or seen snow, I'm like, this is just normal. And, that's why I always, like, crave is to be in an area that has, like, 4 distinct seasons or drivable to like mountains and to do that stuff, because just growing up, that's what we used to do. And, it was good memories, and it sucks because my kids don't have any of those memories.
I mean, but they get to do stuff year round that other kids don't, right? Like we don't see the leaves turn. Our leaves go from like beautiful green to crispy in like no time. Yeah. Right. But they got to wear shorts on Christmas Day. So there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I guess. But is that a memory that they're going to have of like, man, I'm really glad I got to wear shorts? Or if they're like, we used to have fun going sledding and playing in the snow. And because when I think back to a kid, I think back to those 4 distinct seasons. Like I love spring's my favorite season because, my parents always had like a bunch of like flowers and stuff in the front yard, like daffodils and all, and the smell of daffodils and all that stuff. It just I always associate springtime with that time of the year. The summers in Sacramento were hot, but they were dry, It was, hot August nights. Have you heard about those car shows up in Reno?
Yep.
During the summer, there's car shows all the time. Places, Texas, like during the summer, like nobody wants to be outside.
That this summer was definitely true.
This summer was
horrible. This summer,
and then you go straight to like, hey, we have a week of fall. And then So I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah, the kids were definitely wearing shorts during summertime.
Right.
But, anyways,
they need a dirt bike. That's what needs to happen because they can't go sledding. They need a dirt bike.
Maybe.
And with that nice piece of property you guys have. Plus, imagine all the cattle they can wrangle on that dirt bike whenever you guys are out there at the ranch.
That would be awesome. Danny got over a foot of snow.
Zine?
Oh, yeah, Danny Zine overnight the other night, and he sent me a video of him driving to the grocery store, and it was just crazy. Which, another thing, in Idaho where Danny lives, with snow and storms, people don't go raid the grocery stores like they do here. Like
No.
we're getting these little flurries, and grocery stores are legitimately empty.
Yeah.
No milk, no eggs, no bread. They're gonna be on that French toast diet for a couple weeks.
Yeah, apparently.
And then it's like toilet paper, paper towels,
All gone.
Everything's gone.
Yep.
Dude, what the heck, man?
It's crazy,
But
man.
yeah, he sent me a video of him driving this store, and I was like, man, that's beautiful. And then the next day, waking up, or not waking up, but he was opening up the door, and there's like this wall of snow on the door, and I'm like, yes. And so, anyways,
Those are good times.
I hope all the kids here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area enjoyed that little bit of snow that you got. I know that I just think I sent that picture, and I was just thinking about how excited my kids were going to be. And, they've been around snow. We've gone to the mountains. They've seen, we've gone up to Santa Fe, New Mexico in the wintertime. So they've been around like snow. I'm just thinking about the kids in this area that have never had the chance to really play in snow, like what they get to do today.
It'd be fun.
And it's Martin Luther King Day.
Yep.
So the schools are closed. Our kids' school wasn't going to be closed, but they shut it down because of weather. So there's a lot of happy kids today.
Yeah, for sure. And there's something different about like snow at home, right? Like whenever you go and you're like, at a resort, or you're going skiing on a trip or whatever, you got to go, you play in the snow, and then you got to get through the hotel lobby, and then you got to get to where you're going, you got to go to your cabin to do stuff. Whereas whenever it's at home, you run through the house, mom yells at you to, wipe your boots off, you got to change clothes into something that's just a little bit more dry than what you just took off so that you can get right back out in it.
Yep.
There's something about snow at home that's way different than it is whenever when you're traveling and stuff. It's a lot more fun.
Yeah. So what do we got? We got some some Q&A.
Bro, we have got so many questions from the last couple of posts that we made. We got some interesting questions from Mike's episode. I got more questions from Mike, but most of those have to do with the text message thread that the three of us are in.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable, this guy. But so I want to get us kicked off with a guy who's got another podcast.
Oh yes.
Yeah, our friend over at Simper Sometimes. This was one of the very first questions that we got a few weeks ago whenever we put out an Instagram post that said, what questions do you have for JP? And he has some of the same questions that I have for you. So he and I are in a little bit of alignment there. And the first one is, what do you care so much to create a podcast and discuss these awesome topics? What drives you to do what you do with Echelon Front? I've been a Marine recruiter for 4 years on my first tour, and now currently 9 months into my second tour. I find that caring too much can be a burden, especially when others don't care about their own families and lives. It's also added more stress to me, especially when I am so mission-oriented. I've had other people and missions added to mine, and when I was needed or in need, it never came. People have always taken my caring ways and abused it, which in many ways has caused me to become less caring and more selective. But being a Christ follower, I also know he's called us to compassion and to be caring. All in all, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I've seen myself in scenarios where caring results in a negative impact on my family and my way of life.
Yeah. So these are awesome, and Simper Sometimes appreciate your service, and I've been following you on Instagram. I like what you do, and I know I need to align my schedule with yours so that we can record a podcast, which we will do, brother.
I just don't think you need his mustache. I think it's great on him, but I don't want to see you with his mustache.
It's funny you said that. I was shaving. I haven't had to shave or had any work stuff calls or whatever, and I was almost going to come in here just rocking a mustache, but decided not to.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'd have been in shock.
That would have been epic. Why do I care so much? I think those values were instilled into me when I was as a young kid. It was just having empathy for people, to see the good in people and to want to provide value. And, the reason why I created this podcast with Lucas, the reason why we created this podcast is because we wanted to do something that created value. The intent was, okay, if I can share lessons that I've learned from my time in the military, my time in business, my time working at Echelon Front, working with different companies, and can, bring those lessons into people's lives so that they don't make those same mistakes, or they can learn from those lessons that I've learned either firsthand or indirectly just from talking with people and listening to people, interviewing people, taking notes, working with people. If we can do that and it helps a business or helps a family or helps a marriage, then that's a win, because I mean, we've talked about this. The world needs leadership more than ever. And when we talk about leadership, it's not a leadership title. Your title doesn't make you a leader. What makes you a leader is your ability to build relationships and influence people to do the right thing. The world needs good leaders. And so if this can help contribute to someone being a good leader in their marriage or in their home or in their community, then that's worth it, because there is a ripple effect. It's some of the thought process of what our pastor just started talking about. The word of the year this for our church is discipleship. And, I feel like, I'm not saying that we're out here creating disciples, but I mean, if you looked at it from a different angle, you could, because we're trying to teach people about Jesus. Mm-hmm. We're trying to teach people about leadership. And so I guess, understanding that we also carry a burden with these lessons that we've learned in life and the opportunity that I have to be able to do what I do at Echelon Front, I'm also very thankful. So I don't take what I do at Echelon Front for granted. I don't take it lightly. And I know there's like a legitimate burden associated with that in regards to sharing lessons and living a good example and being true to these principles. I mean, yeah, I struggle with them. I fail with them. At times, because I'm human and I'm flawed, and things will come in, but understanding, okay, the mistakes that are being made and correcting them, or hey, a mistake is made, correct it now, instead of like sitting on it. And so I think for me, the biggest thing was I just wanted to create value to other people. I had a lot of people over the years say, hey, you should do a podcast, you should do a podcast, you should do a podcast. And in my mind, I always felt like, well, I don't want to do a podcast because Jocko does one, as if that was going to be perceived that I was trying to be like Jocko.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people that probably think that, and that's fine. But when I was talking with Jocko about it, he goes, yeah, you should do a podcast. You should write a book. You should do this. You should do all these things. I'm making up random things that people say.
Boy, that feels like that's not true.
What I'm saying is like, the reason why I said that is like, because Jocko and Leif wrote books.
Right.
And I know other guys that are writing books right now or have finished books. And you know what Jocko and Leif say? That's awesome. Yeah. So it's in my mind when I realized, okay, this could be a good thing. And I really also, because of also what we do with Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, there was a while I was like, well, I don't want it to seem like I'm competing with the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Sure. I don't want to take away from that. And so I had to really make sure that it was going to be framed the right way and that it was going to be perceived the right way. And, if we can expose people to what we teach at Echelon Front and it drives people to Echelon Front for exposure to the principles and or, revenue to Echelon Front as a form of me saying, thank you for what I get to do with you guys. I want to provide value to clients. I want to provide value to the company. Awesome. If people can fix their personal things in their life, awesome. And then if people can have a different exposure and or platform to learn about Jesus and maybe challenge themselves and reevaluate the way that they live their lives and or how they conduct themselves in regards to their relationship, and or maybe they don't have a relationship with God yet. And this podcast drives them to listening to the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast to dive deeper into the word. And then they find a church and then they receive salvation. Then that's a major win. Yeah. That's a major win. So that's why I did the podcast. And in regards to what drives me to do what I do at Echelon Front, well, it's a way for me to honor my fallen teammates and my fallen brothers. And again, to reiterate what I said earlier, just sharing the lessons that I've learned in combat, so that people can learn them in a classroom environment and not real time.
Yeah.
In regards to leadership,
I'm curious so he talks about, there's a concern with people taking advantage of him caring, right? And this is something that I think everybody has someone in their life that they can point to that they're like, I think that person gets taken advantage of by other people, right? That they care and their compassion or their care, their drive, whatever is taken advantage of by someone. I'm I have had to find a balance of this in my life, especially from like a pastoral perspective, right?
I bet.
Is that, then I have had to change my expectations of other people, not like necessarily in a negative way, but just the idea that, just because I've done something for somebody does not mean, one, I can expect that they'll return a favor ever.
Yeah.
Or two, that I should expect them to know that this is something that they should do. And that's where so that's kind of the first thing. And the second thing is that it's driven me to engage those people in relationship so that they'll help me, but that they see the value in helping others. Right. And I know that this relationship and expectations are big things that you guys talk about at Echelon Front. So how do you use relationships to lead people to give back? Because that's one of the big challenges I think that's in front of all leaders. And it's something that you guys exemplify at Echelon Front. It's also something that if you look at y'all's history in the SEAL teams is part of the culture of the SEAL teams. How do you lead in a way that it creates that culture, not just like within your organization, but also like within your family and your friend groups?
Yeah. So the first thing is we have to think about like intent. Intent has a smell.
Right.
Yeah. I know we've talked about that. I know I mentioned it on Mikey's last episode is intent has a smell. And you need to be mindful that your intent legitimately has a smell, and you have to actually challenge yourself. Like, what are your intentions? Are you helping others only so that you can be helped, or are you helping people because it's the right thing? We do the right thing for the right reasons. I don't ever want to find myself helping somebody with the sole purpose that, well, I'm going to help Lucas do this so that I can call in a favor later. That's not a good posture. That's not a good position for you to be in regards to your attitude. And so, and I know that this is not you. I clearly know that. And from what I've seen, I don't think this is an issue with this gentleman, Semper sometimes. I really don't. What I think he needs to understand is he needs to do a better job evaluating other people's intent and stop wasting energy on people that aren't going to contribute back to him.
That's an interesting point, because my next question is like, when do you say no?
When you don't feel bad about it. And that's because you know that you've done everything to build that relationship. You've put in well above what they're able to give back to you. And it's one of those things where you understand, like, okay, well, if I keep pouring into this relationship, it's taking away from all the other relationships that are going to flourish. I mean, look at it from a standpoint of like, okay, if I have these seeds that can flourish into vegetables,
okay,
right? Okay. And I have this area of ground over here, and I put seeds over here, and it's like super dry, it's cracked, it's like really bad quality soil, right? Whether that's from past trauma and experiences or the environment or a mindset or just whatever, right? And it's just really bad. And I break up the ground, I put the seed in there, and I water it, and I keep watering it, right? That's you pouring into that person. That's you doing stuff. That's you caring about them, and you keep doing it. Well, you have another area over here that is really good ground, like really rich soil, full of nutrients, and you put the seed over here. You don't have to like dig up the ground. You literally with your hands can open up the soil to put your seed in there, and then carefully cover it up, and then you water it, and you keep watering both of them, and this one starts to flourish and grow, and this one does something and then dies, and then you feel bad that it died over here. And so you dig it up again, you put another seed in there, and you water it again. Instead of putting the seed where you know things are going to grow and flourish. And meanwhile, you're still over here, you're watering this one, and it's growing and flourishing, but it could be duplicated over here. Mm-hmm. And like people have to be receptive to this two-way relationship.
Yeah.
And yes, we have that culture in the SEAL teams. Most SEALs have that. about them. Some are extremely selfish. It's super obvious, and they're just not good team players.
Yeah.
But I think for us in SEAL teams, it's ingrained into our DNA from the beginning. Hey, the priorities is the team and the mission above all else. If I take care of the team, what do I tend to accomplish? The mission. If I'm focused on accomplishing the mission, who do I have to take care of? The team. Yeah. So it's like these two things feed each other. Take care of the team, accomplish a mission. You do one, you're going to get the other for the most part. Most of the time, that works out all the time. And so we know that from day one. Like, you're told that as a new guy, like, hey, you take care of the team gear, then your platoon's gear, then the squad's gear, fire team's gear, and then your gear. Like, you are always last in that pecking order. And so that's why it's easier ingrained into our DNA of who we are as a culture in the SEAL teams. Most people aren't like that because they're told, like, hey, you got to look out for yourself because no one else is going to. And then your grandmother that's been lying to you that says, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lie. That violates decentralized command.
100%.
Which is empowering other people with their ideas to go get stuff done. It might not be as good as you want it done, but go empower them to get it done. And so in regards to pouring into people that aren't giving it back to you, you have to come to the realization that that's a dead relationship. That's a dead cause. And it sucks because you're a good person. You know, if your natural thing is to pour into people more than they get back from you, like, yeah, there can be a burden and it can be exhausting, but you have to understand, like, okay, what's your number one focus? What's your priority? If it's getting the mission accomplished, well, then you're going to fail the mission by pouring into people that aren't equally giving it back to you. And that's a hard conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes a hard conversation of exposing this and saying, hey, Lucas, man, there's been a few things I've been wanting to talk to you about. And to be honest, I haven't made this a priority. And to be honest, it's going to be a hard conversation for me. So I apologize for that. But hey, man, the way I feel in regards to our relationship is I feel like I'm constantly putting in, and I don't feel like I get that back from you. And now this is the way I feel. Now, whether that's true or not on your end, I just want you to know, like, this is how I feel. This is how it's affecting me personally. This is how it's affecting our relationship. I'm starting to have some resentment towards you whenever we do these things. And obviously that's a problem. And this is my fault for not bringing this up to you sooner. I should have said something a long time ago. I never said anything. It continued to get worse. And I just want to bring it to your attention. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Now, that's a hard conversation.
No doubt.
Like, most people aren't going to be able to have that conversation. So here's the other thing. If you're not willing to have these hard conversations, stop complaining about it then. Or do something to fix it, or let it go.
Right.
Just let it go and move on to what you need to be focusing on. Now, the just let it go thing isn't a good option. That's a option.
Sure.
But it's not a good option because you're not addressing the problem.
Yeah.
You still need to address the problem. Now, after you address the problem, how that person reacts, that allows you to choose what your next action is.
Right.
If they're super apologetic, if they're like, dude, I had no idea. I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent. Like, I had no idea. And then you can work from it and reset expectations and standards, and, you set some boundaries. Cool. If they're super defensive or confrontational, then at that point, just professionally shut off that relationship and say, hey, you know what? Obviously, I let this go way too long, and I'm sorry. For where I'm at right now in my life, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah. And
I love you. I wish you the best of luck. However, like, what we've been working on or doing, or this time that we've been spending together, it's not conducive to me growing as a husband, as a father, as a leader,
as a human.
Yeah. So, like, I've just got to shut it down, man. And that's so hard to do.
It is. So my wife and I know I mentioned this on the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast before. My wife and I, we do a devotion every week. And one of the things in that devotion that we do, there's a question at the end of every one, and about every 3 or 4 weeks, the question will come up like, what is happening in this aspect of our relationship that is building resentment? And then
that's good.
Like it'll be, another 3 or 4 weeks down the road, and then it'll be, a question that's specific to whatever topic, but the end of that question is, what am I doing in this area that is building resentment? And so it's, this devotion in particular is like constantly asking you to confront those things that are building resentments, because those are relationship killers, right?
Yeah.
When to come back to something that you said earlier, it kind of sparks a question in me. You're talking about the two different types of soil. How, as a leader, right? So let's say that we've got, person who is in the rocky, the craggy soil, but we see a lot of potential in them. Then we've got the person in the fertile soil. The person in the fertile soil starts to grow, right?
Fire and forget eventually, right?
Okay, well, I think we do get there eventually. My question is about the leader that starts to misappropriate their own time, because I've been totally guilty of this. That I've seen, okay, so this person is growing, they're doing great. And so now instead of like nurturing that growth, I focus, maybe I was splitting it like 50-50 attention, right? Now I'm putting like a third of my attention to the guy that's growing. And now I'm putting, 2/3 of it towards the one that I'm like, this guy has a lot of potential, but he's not growing. But if I just work a little harder, then it'll help to do that. And now I'm kind of leaving this other guy, like he's still getting some, some nutrients. He's still getting some one-to-one time. He's doing some stuff, but because he's experiencing success and I see that he's doing well, now I'm diverting my attention back towards this person who eventually, or maybe already has on multiple occasions, right? Ends up not being somebody that I can depend on or leader. How do I prevent myself, or how do leaders prevent themselves from investing, in those people? Because I think it's a really common problem.
Detachment is a superpower. You're emotional. I know. You're emotionally connected to wanting somebody else to win more than they want to win themselves. Like, I could have all the talent in the world, but if I don't want to put in the work, it doesn't matter what you do for me as a coach. I have to make that decision myself.
Yeah.
And that's why good leaders and good coaches understand what drives their people. Like what's in it for you personally and professionally. Like, I have to know what their why is,
Yeah.
And you and I talked a lot about that before we started this podcast so that we could have alignment.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that we do at Echelon Front, I had a conversation with Cody and Danny and Justin recently, all separated, kind of on like, hey, like, what's the next steps for you? Like, what do you guys want to be doing? And, that was sparked after the ELT meeting that we had in San Diego. And it was good because Danny and I were able to get some really good realignment. I mean, Danny's been crushing and doing awesome stuff, but there's some other things that he wants to focus on. And I was like, oh, well, bro, let's divert your focus energy that way. Like, you're really good at that stuff. That's your wheelhouse. And I had failed to do it sooner. Honestly, it was a huge leadership failure on my part of not having that conversation sooner. And so I'll also go back to, I've said this multiple times, but desire and capabilities are two different things.
Yep.
And you have to look at somebody's desire. Now, can you grow somebody's capabilities? Yeah. But if they don't have the desire, it's not going to be done. And that goes back to discipline is rooted in the truth that we tell ourselves. If somebody is lacking discipline, you can't impose it upon them.
No.
In the realm that we live in now, you can't do it. Now, as a father, yeah, you can impose a little bit of discipline, but eventually does that end up going away? Yeah, it does. I mean, even in the military, we could impose discipline upon people, but that's a tactical win, strategic loss. And in the civilian life, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
It's never going to work a long time. And so if you're working, it's like, long time, well before Echelon Front. I had a buddy who wanted to do some things with his life. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. And I was like all fired up to help out and work out and train and do all these different things with them. And it was all talk.
Yeah.
It was all talk every single time. And it finally got to the point where I'm like, bro, I'm not going to keep waking up at 4 a.m. to come work out with you when you're not going to actually be training and working out. Like I had other guys, like my buddy Dylan, who wanted to better himself and would literally do anything and everything I said. And I'm not saying I said like in a, like, I don't mean that, I don't want that to be taken the wrong way.
Yeah, you weren't like giving mandates. He would do every bit of every piece of the workout that you gave to him.
Everything.
Yeah.
Diet, sleep, exercise, time on the, I mean, bro, I'm telling you, every single thing, he would do it. He would ask really good questions like, okay, hey, why do I need to be doing this? I mean, my buddy Dylan is like the perfect person that you'd want to work with, to mentor for anything in life. Like, I'm telling you, anything. Like I wish he lived here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because if we could be training jiu-jitsu together and going to Milestone together, I mean, bro, stand by. You know what I mean? I mean, dude, like, we'd be discipling men. He'd be leading small groups with his wife. You know, he'd be training and competing and I mean, he's just like, he's one of those guys where he's very coachable and he's teachable, and he has the desire to be a better version of who he is. Yeah. His wife is the same way. And, anyways, like, so you find someone like that, and then you have someone over here who, like, isn't showing up for the workouts, or just is there but they're not doing it, and then they'll go do the workout, and then it's like, oh, I was just so hungry, I had to stop by Wendy's, and you're like, okay, like, you could have just gotten a grilled chicken breast and not 6 spicy chicken sandwiches. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a balance there, and you know, and that's why detachment is a superpower. Is like, because people like Semper sometimes, like you, like me, like most people, we get sucked into wanting the good for other people more than they want it themselves. And it sucks because we're taken away from ourselves. We're taken away from our families.
That's the big one for me now. Because that was, I mean, when we came into the studio today, we were talking about traveling, right? Mm-hmm. And what your travel schedule is insane. But that I had a period where of 104 weeks, I was on the road like 101 of them. Yeah. And it didn't bother me one iota. I was a single guy. Like, home base was, I would drop my luggage off on like Monday afternoon. I'd go, you know, I'd come home from the airport, I'd drop my luggage off, I'd go get lunch, come back home, do laundry, put everything back into a bag, and leave Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning. Yeah. And that was it. And that was my life, and I loved it, but I didn't have a family at home. You know, mom and dad and my siblings, but like, that's a text message or a phone call. Yeah. Right? I'm not yearning to get back home to hang out with them like I do, you know, my wife and kid. And that, the prioritization of family completely changes the way that we have to look at things, because especially as leaders, like, if we're setting the example that our family comes second, that is something that other people will start to do, and we will lead people in a way that leaves destruction behind all of the folks that we're leading, because we've taught them that your home life's not as important as this.
And it's hard because, like, with the position I'm in, with how much I travel, people see that and they just assume, like, oh, what you do at Echelon Front is, because I've actually had people like, man, is it hard having your family kind of be in second place? And I'm like, well, the reason why I do this is so that my family can have security and we have financial stability and we're preparing for our future. And this is a strategic play. And my wife and I have alignment with me being gone as much as I'm gone. My kids understand it. But, like, you know, I was thinking about it, like, as you're literally saying that thing, what you were just saying, which was awesome. And I'm, you know, hindsight, you know, and then detachment is, I'm like, you know, given the current status of our kids' age and everything else like that, with me leaving today, like, what I should have done is either you and I record super early, so then that way I get back for by time they're awake, or we just knocked it out last night while literally everybody's in bed. Right. And then that way today, this morning, I could have been playing with the kids in the snow and doing those things with them before I leave for a work trip. And you're like, oh man, and then it comes back, and that goes back to just being strategic and thinking big picture. But
and there's familial alignment, I think, is one of the biggest things in general. We've talked about this before. Like, we have alignment with our wives on this project, and we have alignment with one another, and that's great. But do I have alignment with the lovely Mrs. Pinckard that this is a project for us that needs to be a priority project? And I think that there's a lot of times where we get excited about things and we're like, oh, okay, JP and I have alignment on it. This is what we're going to do. And we may go home and tell, hey, this is what we're going to do, and never let our spouse in on what that looks like, what our intent is with it. And then, 6 months down the road when we have frustration and we're trying to express, frustration to them about a project that we got in on that's not working out, they're like, you haven't actually told me anything about this.
Yeah.
I know you've been putting efforts towards this for the last 6 months. I've been trying not to get upset because it's taken away from our family time, but I don't know anything about it, so I can't help. And I'm trying really hard not to resent you for doing this and not bringing me in on it. Dude, those are horrible conversations to have.
Those are not ideal.
No, they're not. And I think in this case, not just with what we're doing with this podcast, but also when it comes to the travel schedule and those kinds of things, like, you have to be honest with your spouse as what you're getting into, instead of trying to pitch it as like, oh, you know what? They're talking about a crazy travel schedule. Like, we may be gone 100 days a week when it's going to be 150. And so you're trying to soften the blow so it doesn't seem that much.
That's like, another mistake.
Yeah. Any of those like veiled lies is just awful. Yeah. Speaking of,
so last thing
stuff.
I want to say, he says, but being a follower of Christ, I know it calls us to have compassion and caring. Yes, you're right. And the only thing I wrote down next to that is just, having empathy for other people, but also it's okay to create distance, because if people are not pouring back into you, it doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you don't forgive them. It doesn't mean that you don't have empathy for them, but it also doesn't mean that they, just because you're a follower of Christ, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it doesn't mean that they have to be included in your life all the time. No, not at all. And especially if that's creating a toxic environment, if there's friction, if there's arguing, if they're, not doing what they need to be doing, if they're not, if the relationship is not equal, then I think you're taken away from what you could be doing, and it's actually draining you in regards to reaching your full potential. Yeah,
and I do think that there's a lot of Christians that we have erred so far on the side of compassion and grace that we've forgotten how to be honest.
Yeah.
And that I think is a big thing, because honesty is compassion in a lot of situations.
I like that.
We do a lot of work, and I've talked about this before with people who are in addiction recovery. And, a couple of weeks ago, actually yesterday, I just did a funeral for a young lady who had graduated a recovery program, who relapsed, and then her parents got, she's in her early 30s. Her parents got the call that no parents want. Like, somebody found your daughter.
Damn it.
And we don't know what happened. And so, like, that's a difficult funeral to do, because you can approach it a couple of ways. Like, we know that she was a believer and she made mistakes. She sinned just like the rest of us do. Yeah. But you can either acknowledge those ups and downs in that service and help a family to heal, or you can ignore them and just focus on the fact that we'll all be together. I think the latter of those two is where a lot of us err on, because we are afraid of honesty.
Yeah.
And so that's not the route that I went. It was probably the hardest funeral I've ever done, especially having known this person. But it did encourage me and other people who are in a situation where we've got another guy who's kind of been bouncing back and forth, where we went to him, we're like, hey, look, dude, I'm not doing your funeral. Like, if something happens to you, I can't. Like, I do not have the emotional capacity to stand up there and do this. So you need to sort this out. Like, I love you. We've invested in you. We know what's going on. And you need to know two things. One, we love you and we care about you. And the second, nobody cares. So come back.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cares what you're doing. Nobody cares what you've been doing. Nobody cares that you relapsed. You need to get back in here, and you need to get plugged back in, because before you make another mistake, you need to really weigh the cost.
Yeah.
Because it's going to cost you your marriage. It's going to cost you your friend group. And ultimately, it's going to cost you your life. There's no way that if you continue down this road, that's not what happens.
Yeah.
And you love somebody, you lead with grace, you do all of those things, but there's a point at which honesty is both compassionate and a show of grace.
Yes.
And then, you know what? He came to church last week.
Good.
And like was just met with tons of people coming up and giving him hugs.
Shocking.
I'm so happy they
The church being the church.
I know. And then so like by the time we get done, like he's obviously very emotional.
Yeah.
Right. His wife was the sponsor of this young lady who passed away, so it's huge for their family. And then this week he went to that absolute debacle of a Cowboys game. Right. They had tickets to go to. They got destroyed. I didn't even watch it. I took a nap.
Yesterday, right?
That was yesterday. So, but he goes to the Cowboys game, and before he goes to the game, because they've had the playoff tickets for a while, he just came to church.
Wow.
He came to church, even though he wasn't going to be able to be in any of the Bible study classes, even though he wasn't going to be able to show up to the service. He knew he needed to be there. And so what happened? He came to church. People rallied around him. We loved on him. We hugged him. And we talked to him about how awesome the game was going to be. And the folks who were Packers fans and Vikings fans gave him a hard time. Yeah. And then, we loved him. We prayed for him. And then we sent him on his way.
Good.
Right? To go do your thing. But if it's not for that honesty,
yeah,
those kind of things don't happen. I think we miss that that piece because we're like, oh no, we're going to be loving and we're going to be compassionate, and we forget that the truth is the most loving, compassionate thing you can tell somebody. Yeah. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but it is that.
I think this guy we got connected on social media because of Andy Frisella's podcast, and
heard of her.
Yeah. The work that I've done up with First Form and stuff like that, and the guy's a stud. I mean, he's pretty crazy story, and I know he wants to make his way down here and come be on the podcast and share his story. And it's, long story short, I mean, he put this out on social media, so I'm not sharing anything that I shouldn't. He made he wanted to run these it was like a marathon a day every day as he worked his way across the United States.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and it was to bring awareness for a few different things and people in rehab and drug addiction, because he suffered from that for a long time, was in prison for a while, and then got out, and then and then when he got done with this thing, I guess there's some people, because he didn't finish it.
Sure.
But
that's a freaking tall order.
Yeah, but he was pretty close to it, man.
Yeah.
Like what he did was incredible. His body just eventually kind of just shut down.
Running 20 miles a day, your body shut down? Stunned.
I know. And that was sometimes up to 30 something miles. And anyways, I guess I don't know the details, but he relapsed. Mm-hmm. After, because he felt like this failure from not getting it done.
Sure.
He didn't have the right proper supportive people in his life that showed him support, being like, hey bro, what you did was incredible. And I guess there was this feeling of just being a failure, ends up relapsing, boom. But now he put it all out there. He was like, no, hey, this is what I did, and this is what I'm going to do to fix it. And he's actually signed up to go to the Pursuit in February.
Heck
here.
Yeah.
And so he's coming here.
That'll be awesome.
Somebody that you and I know very well, who's on an episode prior at the very beginning, helped facilitate getting him out there, because they also follow each other and communicate. Yeah. But it was really cool to see this guy just lean in, and it's the same thing. My brother, and this is not, putting out any information I shouldn't.
We're Facebook friends now.
Yeah.
Yep.
He went to rehab for alcohol, and he reached out and he's like, hey man, I need help. I need to get sober. You know what I mean? And he went and he went to this awesome program. Mama Lee actually helped facilitate it through her foundation, because my brother is a veteran, and anyway, so he does it and he's doing well and everything's good. And bro, he ends up having a drink, again later on down the road with this girl that he was dating, but he tried to hide it. And I remember telling him, I'm like, hey Corey, nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be awesome if you stayed sober, but the fact that you didn't, nobody cares. Just don't lie about it. And he wasn't lying to me, but I just told him, like, hey, dude, nobody cares. If you're healthy and you're happy and you're not drinking a handle of Fireball every night, we're good.
Yeah.
You had some champagne or you had some wine, okay. If you can sustain only that, that's fine. But it was just along the same lines of what you said, hey, let's not hide it. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If you need help, again, cool. Well, there's plenty of people that'll help you, but just don't distance yourself when you don't need to distance yourself.
Right. Don't isolate.
Yep. Isolation is a tool and a trick from the devil.
Amen.
And it's literally what the devil uses to ruin and sabotage and kill people. Yeah. So you gotta avoid that isolation.
Yeah. Solitude is seeking time alone with a purpose, and isolation is getting alone to push others out. And there's a big difference in those two things. Like, we're taught to go seek solitude for prayer, for times of devotion, and those kinds of things. But isolation is an attempt to get others out, not an attempt to get closer to God.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2 that I got here, I'm gonna roll to our second page, is from Handsome Dan.
Oh.
It says, looking at my boys. He's got three little boys. He goes, looking at my boys and myself, looking to get us into jiu-jitsu after hearing some of the benefits of building discipline and confidence on your podcast, considering it as a Christmas gift that's passed. But I'm overwhelmed by the amount of sinners near me, and I have no clue what to look for. What would you look for in determining a good place to begin and learn? I'm not in terrible shape, but I'm certainly not in good shape. Should I work on that first, or just send it and prepare to die?
Send it. Full send. But here's the thing. If you find a good jiu-jitsu school, you're not going to die. And, I mean, good jiu-jitsu schools are going to have beginner programs. And, honestly, if you're brand new to jiu-jitsu, you shouldn't be doing live rolls right away.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't. Now, some people have that capability if they're maybe a wrestler or something. But I know the way we do it at Double Five is if you're like literally brand new, you've never done jiu-jitsu before, you're going to do the beginner's class where they're teaching you the very basics of, okay, this is, you know, this is a guard.
This is your gi. This is how you tie your belt.
Well, you know, we'll start there. Here, we'll tie your belt. Hey, make sure your tail, you know, your toenails and fingernails are clipped before you come on. Make sure you have a clean gi. Make sure you have showered. Hey, don't be walking into the bathroom without your sandals on. Hey, make sure you have clean feet before you come on the mat. Hey, just let the professor, if you're going to be late, let the professor know before you step onto the mat. You know, kind of like some of those basic fundamentals. But then it's going to be you sitting and watching and just learning the very basics of, hey, here's how you put somebody in a guard. Here's how you break out of somebody's guard. If somebody's mounted, you know, all these like little basic things. And for me, it is phenomenal. Him and Vittoria and the other instructors that we have at Double Five are just unreal on teaching the basics. And, you know, and then you're going to sit and watch. When people are rolling, like live rounds, you're going to sit and watch. Or if you're an athlete and like you were doing like decent at understand the fundamentals, it might be positional drills. Like, okay, hey, you're here, they're doing this. The only thing you're trying to do is break out of their guard. The only thing that they're doing is trying to keep you in the guard. So if you can break the guard and slide past, then we reset. And so that's like a really good little escalation of like, okay, you go from drilling to positional drilling. And then I like that for rolling. Like, I like to do that still to myself. But, hey, this is all I want to focus on. Yeah. And they're like, oh, really? That's it? I'm like, yep. And they're like, okay. And so it's really good for both of us. And so that's what you should be doing. So it's not like you're going to need to be in phenomenal shape. I mean, I'm not in phenomenal shape, and I do decent when I'm rolling. But in regards to finding a good place, Jocko's talked about this on his podcast multiple times. It's super easy. Go to the place and say that you're visiting and you'd like to get like a drop-in guest pass. And so some places will let you train for free. Other places, it might be like, oh, well, it's $20 for the day or $50 for the week or whatever. And just say, hey, you wanted to try a few classes. That way you're not getting like this sales pitch, and you can just go in and, you know, you can just check it out. And now Jocko says that, and obviously I agree with that. I will say Jocko's perspective is slightly flawed because Jocko's gym lets anybody train there for free at any time. So people can literally drop in as a guest and train for free, no factor. Formiga does the same thing. Wow. Other gyms, that's not the case. No. Most gyms charge a drop-in fee.
Yeah. Or at the very least, if you're like trying out for membership, if you're like, yeah, you know, I'm thinking about joining the gym, they're like, all right, well, you know, we have this coupon where you can get 2 youth classes or 2 whatever classes, and then they make you check in both times, and then you have the sales pitch, and then so what did you think?
Yeah, most gyms have it set up to where it's like, unless you just straight up say, hey, I'm in town for work. Like I'll straight up say, hey, I'm in town for work because I'm in town for work.
Right.
And sometimes I get to train. I've actually had gyms go, well, you have to wear our gi. And I'm like, I don't have your gi. They're like, well, we have a loaner gi that you can rent. And I'm like, oh, of course you do.
Yeah. You can train here for work if you rent
So the gi that I have, I'm not allowed to wear, but I have to rent your gi. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Or the other one, like some places will be like, well, the drop-in fee is you have to buy a rash guard. I'm like, okay. And then the rash guards are $85.
Good grief.
You're like, I don't want this rash guard. I'm never going to wear the rash guard again. But anyway.
But if I'm going to spend $85 on a rash guard, I better get like a Zoom from Pete.
From Pete Roberts himself.
He can just show me a couple of chokes while I'm on the road and then just be done.
That would,
I know. Yeah.
I would pay for that.
Maybe that's what they need to do for their rash guards is like, all right, if you buy a rash guard, you get 15-minute Zoom from Pete and he'll teach you a choke.
I would pay $300 for a rash guard if it gave
you access to Pete for a few minutes.
Yes,
yeah,
100%.
No doubt.
You get a sick custom rash guard that nobody else can buy.
Okay,
and you get a Zoom with Pete, Dedeco, and Alexei. And Dedeco and Alexei are Pete's 2 black belts that he came up underneath.
So that's a product Origin needs to work on developing. That's not something currently on the market.
Dennis, I know you're listening. Make it happen,
Fix
baby.
it, Dennis. Yeah.
So that's honestly just going into a gym and just also when I help people do this, what I'll do is I'll look in the area and then I'll do a quick Google search, find the gyms. I'll click on those gyms. And then I'll type that into Instagram, and then I'll look at the gym's Instagram page. Yeah. And then I'll start, and if they have like the professors tagged, then I'll look at the professor, and I'll see kind of, do they compete? How long have they been teaching?
Yeah.
How do they conduct themselves on social media?
It's a big one.
And then I'll just make my decision from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. This one is from Anthony Brown, and Anthony and I went back and forth in the DMs about this because I wanted to be as specific as possible on this question. It says, first, I'm grateful for what you guys are doing. I'm on the Echelon Front Academy, a longtime follower of Jocko. The way y'all have brought leadership and God in the same podcast is awesome. It fills both cups. My question that I'm going with today is, how do you handle working for bosses with questionable morals? And so I followed up with him and I was like, are you talking about bosses that have like questionable work ethic? Or are you talking about a boss that has like questionable lifestyle morals? Because there is a line to where, those are very different things. It might have a different type of answer for each of them. This one in particular is a boss who is doing things at work that are in an ethically gray area, but more dark gray. So they're closer to the like, this is not a good ethic, but there's still enough kind of mental gymnastics that you can do to where you're like, that's not totally unethical, but it's the intent of it stinks.
Yeah. I'll say pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And that was something that was told to me when I was doing sales, meaning don't be greedy.
Okay.
All right. Don't be greedy. And the reason why I'm thinking about this, and I'll explain my thought process, is...
I do love that saying, though, because I've got pigs.
Yeah. I'm willing to bet the boss that he's talking about was black and white at the very beginning. Most people, when they start businesses, it's black and white. Hey, wrong, right, we operate in the right. Because I'm not going to sacrifice what we've been doing to do the wrong thing. Yeah. This has been a slow little trend in this direction. Mm-hmm. And it's probably going to keep trending until something really bad happens. So I would, depending on the relationship that you have with your boss, I would ask yourself, do you have the ability to have a conversation with your leadership and question it without calling them out? Can you bring it up? Do you have enough leadership capital to have that conversation? Do you have enough influence with your leadership? So let's say I work for you and you've been doing something that's like, kind of, it's in the gray area. I know it's in the gray area. You know it's in the gray area. You also know that I know that it's in the gray area. Everybody knows it's in the gray area.
Yes.
And we've just been sitting there and nobody's saying anything. And then now it's trending more towards the, hey, we could actually, if we push it a little bit more, we could actually get in trouble. Right now, it's just questioning, not so much trouble. And so
we're going to get our wrist slapped if we get audited, but kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I don't agree with it. I would have to do an evaluation of my relationship with you to see how could I actually bring this up to you where it actually has impact that you're hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So let's say you say, hey, JP, I need you to go get this done. And I know that's in the gray area, the dark gray area. Mm-hmm. I would look at it and say, hey, awesome. Hey, Lucas, I have a few questions for you before I go get this done. I know based off of like what we're allowed to do in this industry and the rules and regulations that this company has put in place, me doing it this way is questionable based off of my perception, because the way I perceive you asking me to get this done and doing and getting this work done, it puts me in a position that I'm not comfortable with. So I'm just wondering, what am I missing? What am I missing? Because I know that you have a little more insight and you have a different perspective than I have. So I'm just curious if you could share with me your insight in regards to why we're able to do it this way. Because when I look at it, we shouldn't be able to do it this way.
Yeah.
And just bring it to their attention. It might have been, I mean, again, we want to give people a little bit of grace and a little bit of empathy, the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. So it might be one of those things where there's just been this slow changes from external forces or even internal that maybe the boss wasn't 100% aware of. And now all of a sudden he's like, oh, like now that you say that, actually, we can't do it that way. So I'd give them the benefit of the doubt first, a little bit of grace. And again, this is on you. You're not calling them out. You're like, hey, if I do it this way, like this is wrong. You're putting me in a bad position. I'm not comfortable with this.
Right.
You could do that. That's pretty direct.
Yeah.
Not always ideal for building a relationship when you're now
indirect approach.
Attacking someone. But if you have the indirect approach where you're asking questions and seeking clarification and getting alignment, if you do this enough times, usually people can see the flaws in their plan themselves. And then if we go to the extreme where they're still like, no, you need to go do this, like, all right, cool. Now, when you go do it, you do it within the rules and regulations that is supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And you do it the right way. You do it within the ethical parameters that are set. And if you get in trouble for doing your job the right ethical way, then you need to go find another company to work for.
Yeah.
But realize once you leave, you lose all the influence that you had there. So if you were in a leadership position and protecting your team from going and doing the wrong thing, once you're gone, who's to say the next person is going to be of the same morals, standards that you have to guide their team to doing the right thing? So
yeah, I ran into this a lot whenever I was working in sales. And the thing that we would do is that we would, and this I think is pretty indicative of sales culture, and it really hurt me whenever I got into ministry, or when I went into ministry full time, right? Was that we would say that we had done something if we had the intent to do it, right? And this is a pretty typical thing in sales because you know that you need certain things to happen in order to make a sale. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody's like, hey, did you email this person? I'm on the road. I know I haven't emailed them, but because I have the intent to email them, I would say yes. And then email them whenever I got to the next spot instead of saying like, hey, this is the next thing I'm going to do, or I'm going to talk to them whenever I get to, point B or whatever. And when you're doing that in sales, people tend to overlook it because it is part of sales culture. Because I said that I did this because I have to protect my commissions. I have to protect my sales. I don't want them giving this responsibility to somebody else. And so it's all of that we were told. Though when I was in ministry and I did something like that, one of the things I didn't count on was that there were relationships with those people. So I told somebody I was heading out of town and they're like, hey, did you ask this guy named Jamie, a great dude who I worked with up in Canada. He was like, hey, did you ask Jamie to cover your class? I was like, yep, I did. No problem. Knowing that was the next thing I was going to do whenever I got to the coffee shop. Yeah. When I get to the coffee shop where I want to do work, I get a call back from my boss and he's like, hey, I just got off the phone with Jamie. He has no idea that he's supposed to be covering. Why did you lie to me? So then I'm like, I was about to call him. He's like, well, then why did you tell me that you did?
Oh, that's good.
Right?
I mean, it's good that
it's good that he called me out and that we learned that. But then watching how that changed is when I came back and was working in the sales industry. One of the things that we got from people was letters of intent to say, hey, you know what? We're going to do this. Okay, well, do you actually have this physical product? I'm like, no, we don't. Well, I'm trying to pitch you to somebody else. Can you write me a letter of intent that you intend to do this so that there can be some accountability there? I can be honest. You guys will have something that, they can hold y'all accountable to. But now there's transparency all the way across. It's going to do a lot better if we start a relationship out where we're totally honest instead of all of us working within this gray area.
That's awesome.
Dude, it worked. We won nearly every bid because of it.
Yeah.
Like just there's those little simple things that you can do. All right. Next question. Danny Wells. How do you reset bad behavior you've allowed on the job site? Haven't held people to the standards that need to be kept, getting back on the path, but feel like I can't tell people that now we just follow the standards.
Let's see. How do you reset bad behavior?
So how do you?
Yeah, it's a simple conversation
you've allowed.
Yeah, very similar to what we were talking about earlier. We have a framework at Echelon Front for having hard conversations, and this is what you do is, you set your team down and you explain to them why you failed them. This is about you failing your team, not your team failing. This is about you as a leader failing your team. And so I would sit down, Danny, with my team and explain to them and say, hey, I literally would have this as a formal meeting so that they understand like the seriousness of what's going on. And I would explain to my people, say, hey, I have completely failed you as a leader by not adhering to the standards that we know as an organization has set in place. And we've been getting away with doing it at this standard, but we haven't been performing at the standard that we should. And we haven't been producing the correct product. And this is how it impacts the company in a negative manner. This is how this has impacted you in a negative manner. And this is 100% my fault. Here's what we should be doing moving forward. What do you guys think we should do to raise our standards as a team? Like, what are some thoughts that you have that would help us raise our standards back to where they should be? Because I want to be a part of a team that's operating at a high level. You guys are more than capable of operating at a high level. These are my thoughts. What do you guys think we should do? And again, I want to reiterate to you guys, I am sorry for allowing this to happen. This is my fault, and I'm never going to let this happen again. So you're explaining the problem, the impact and consequences to the organization and to themselves. You're taking ownership multiple times throughout there.
Right. And
then you provide a solution, but ultimately drive ownership to them over what the solution should be. Because at the end of the day, if it's your team, I want them to create the how. So you give them the what and the why and let them create the how.
I think that's the crux of the whole intent of decentralized command, right? That if you allow them to create the how, then
they have ownership.
They take ownership of it, right? And I know that was a big thing for you guys on a lot of the ops that y'all went on in Ramadi, was that you got to come up with the plan, and then your platoon commanders and your task unit commander, they got to be the tactical geniuses because they looked at your plan and were able to poke holes in it instead of that coming from the top down, where now all of a sudden you're trying to poke holes in your commander's plan, and that's not
a good
doesn't
thing.
Seem like
and then not,
seem like it works well.
And also not once did I ever feel like I was dictated to do anything, ever.
Yeah.
You got to think about that. We're in the military, in the SEAL teams. We're deployed overseas in combat, and not once did I ever feel like my leadership was dictating what I did.
That's got to be a great feeling.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing because I had ownership, I had buy-in, and like you're saying, our leadership had the ability to poke holes in the plan, and there's sometimes they would do that by asking questions. Hey, JP, I really like how you're going to set up an overwatch on this building. It gives you visibility of that road that we asked you guys to watch. You can watch the troops that are patrolling. That's awesome. Hey, do you think if you were to split up this large team into 2 teams and you guys had mutually overlapping fields of fire where you guys both had visibility, you had different angles so you can actually see more, and you guys could support each other by watching each other's back from attacks from the enemy, do you think that might keep you guys a little bit safer and make you more efficient? I'd be like, yeah. And then the leadership would say, well, cool. What other building do you think you could set up on to get this done? And then I'd look at the map and be like, well, I think we could do here. And then if we were over here, this would help. And, my leadership would then say, like, man, I really like your plan. Let me know what I can do to support. It's still my plan the whole time.
Yeah, it's not only
but
that.
They directed me to a better version.
Yep. And it allows them to not be, like you said, not dictating, but then how much does it elevate their tactical and strategic knowledge? Because they were able to detach from, instead of a plan that they created, see where your plan may be different. And then you go back and you're like, bro, those guys are really good at this stuff. Like, 100%. Where if it was their plan, they would never be able to do that. And if you were the one that had to poke holes in it, you're going back and you're like, I am not sure.
Which here's the deal: anybody can poke a hole in any plan.
Absolutely,
it doesn't matter how good the plan is. You can be like, well, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Or like, let's just say you think your leadership created the perfect plan. Let's play make-believe for a second. And you're like, man, this is the absolute perfect plan. And then you go out there, guess what happens? Life. So the perfect plan that you had is going to fall apart. And so if you're dictating a plan to your people, it's going to fall apart. But if you give ownership to your people to create a plan, to improve the standards, and to do the right thing, when that plan falls apart, it was their plan. Therefore, they're going to be more eager to fix the plan to maintain the momentum that they had.
Yeah.
And you got to drive ownership. You have to drive ownership. And there might be some resistance to people wanting to step up and lead, and they're just going to be like, well, I don't. That's what you get paid for. Like, that's your job. Like, I don't know. Okay, just, again, detach from your emotions and just challenge them. Teach them how to grow, how to think, and just ask them questions. Hey, Lucas, you're right. It is my job as your boss. You're factual. It is my job as your boss to be doing these things, but I care about you, and I value your insight. Like, man, you've been doing this for 17 years. You've got a good amount of experience. If I wasn't here and if you had to take my job, what would you do?
Yeah. What
would you do? And then sit and listen, and then find something that they say that you can implement it. And that's kind of how you're going to build that relationship. And because the other thing, if you have people that are super resistant to changing the standards, when you're like, hey guys, I failed you, blah, 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 these are all the things. And if you have guys that are on board with that tells you that the relationship that you have with them is horrible. And you need to focus on building that relationship up.
100%.
Cool.
All right. Next question. My wife doesn't let me go to the gym. What should I do?
You need to get alignment with your wife and explain to her why going to the gym is critical for...
You don't just say, I'm going to the gym, slam the door, and leave?
I mean, you can do anything once. I wouldn't recommend that. Now,
okay, cool.
Full disclosure, there's been times where Amanda and I have been in the middle of like huge fights, and I'm like, I'm leaving to go work out.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, that's the absolute best thing.
Yeah.
For the situation.
Yeah, to get rid of that extra energy.
Yeah, no, you know what? Hey, clearly we're in this big fight. We're not getting anywhere. I'm going to go work out.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes, I have a home gym, so that's literally just me walking out into the garage or, going to the gym. And there's other times where I'm like, I don't even want to be on the same property as this human right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to Justin's gym, or I'm going to go to Lifetime.
Right.
Well, not anymore, because I canceled that membership. Wah, wah. Anyways, and then, so I think you need to have alignment with your wife in regards to why working out is good for mental clarity. It's good for your ability to focus. It's good for your health, your morale. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to be in a better mood. Therefore, you're going to be a better husband.
Yeah.
Now, this situation, they have a new baby.
Okay.
So that throws a dynamic there.
Yep.
That changes. You're going to have to change maybe the time that you go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that you and your wife, if your baby's at the stage where it's sleeping, and if you know that, hey, between the hours of 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., my wife and my kid is out cold.
Yeah.
Every single morning, they're out cold. Well, there's your window to go to work out.
Boom.
Hey, if your wife passes out at 9 p.m. because she's exhausted from taking care of a kid in your household and maybe working. I don't know. She might be working also.
Sure.
And doing all these things. And she's out cold at 9 p.m. and that baby is asleep from 9 to 11. there's your window.
Yep.
So find a window that doesn't negatively impact your wife. Get alignment, and then just ask her why she doesn't want you to go work out. And that's the other thing. Like if she's still like, no, like, can we not afford a gym membership? Okay, that might be the case. And if you can't afford a gym membership, that's a legit thing. You can work out at home. Yeah. There are YouTube videos that you can follow at home and work out. And so, that's what my daughters do. Like sometimes, like that's literally how they create some of their custom workouts is they'll watch these different people work out, and then they'll take the different exercises and then formulate and program their own workouts.
Yep.
And they're doing it at home. It costs them nothing. So they're definitely going to get done. And at the end of the day, if your wife still is like, nope, I don't want you going to the gym. We can't afford it. I need you here. Even when I'm sleeping, I need you here because what if something happens? If the baby wakes up, I need you here.
Yeah.
Also understand that postpartum depression is a very real thing.
No doubt.
And she might be suffering from that and not know that she's suffering from that. And you need to have some empathy for your wife and support your wife and just go straight up prison style with your workouts.
Yeah.
You can get phenomenal workouts at home. You can do a 30-minute EMOM every single day. That's body weight exercises only, and you're going to be good to go.
Yeah.
So
that's what. So when Levi was first born, we were 9 weeks in the NICU, and then when he came home, he really struggled to sleep in the bassinet. Because they had him in the aquarium and there was all kinds of stuff, the first 9 weeks of his life that we just didn't have at home. Right. Yeah. So, he would really, when he woke up, it was terrible and it was so hard to get him to go back to sleep. But if we held him, he would be fine. So my workouts, the first were between 3 and 5 a.m. during a time when Kirsten really needed to sleep because she was nursing.
Yeah.
And all of my workouts consisted of things I could do while I held the baby.
That's awesome.
So lunges, sit to stands, bouncing on the exercise ball, around
the world with that.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I could hold him, and as long as I was touching him, he would be fine. Right.
Awesome.
So I'm doing shoulder presses with the baby, and we're doing floor bench presses, and he's asleep.
Dude, that's
as
awesome.
long as I'm touching him, he's cool. There are things that you can do that will allow you to get what you need without building resentment against your spouse.
Yeah.
In order to try to make sure that you're able to be what you need to be for a given situation.
You can make excuses or you can make things happen. You cannot do both.
Can't do both.
And you got to show your wife love and empathy.
Yeah.
And compassion and just get alignment. And your wife might not understand why this is so important for you.
Yeah.
The other aspect, I know this is extreme. I can't relate to this because my wife's never thought this. And, but I mean, she might be super insecure just having a baby and being overweight. And now all of a sudden, she sees you going and working out and eating healthy and getting in shape as, there might be some insecurity there on that. Yeah. And so it's
you're getting hot and she's trying to recover from having just popped out a human.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, no
That's
doubt.
a very real thing that some ladies feel. And again, you got to show your wife hey, you are absolutely beautiful. You just carried our child. You're recovering from a pretty major thing.
Yeah.
Having a kid it puts major trauma on the body. And then just find ways to encourage her. And start doing stuff with her at the house. Hey, honey, let's do this together. You know what? You're right. We don't need a gym membership. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
Let's go for a walk together. And then instead of buying a gym membership, you go buy a stroller that allows you to go for runs. And then you can go for a run with your kid. You take the kid out of the house, you go for a run, we go for a walk as a family, doing exercises in the living room together with your wife, put on, YouTube or Netflix and find some workout stuff, and then you guys do it together.
Boom.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy stuff.
Cool.
All right. I haven't been intimate with my wife in 30 days. How do I bring this up?
And so this was
a big shift in questions that we just took as we got further down the page.
Yeah, good Lord. And this isn't because of pregnancy. This isn't because of medical reasons. It's just literally zero intimacy.
Yep.
And so that's a rough one.
Mm-hmm.
I just keep going back to alignment. I mean, there's obviously misalignment here.
Yeah.
And I would ask yourself, okay, where have you failed to maintain that alignment with your significant other? Mm-hmm. Where have you failed to maintain intimacy and romance with your wife?
Yep.
Because women need intimacy, they need romance for the most part. That's what they desire, from men. Especially their significant others, and, I'd bring it back old school and go junior high style and be like, and, I would my question to you is like, when's the last time you just went and made out with your wife? Just solely just to kiss her and to love on her and hold her, and that's a challenge, because, most people get in the mode when they're married where they're not doing that anymore.
No.
And then when the intimacy time comes around, there's even some incidences where they're just intimate for the point of being intimate, but there's no actual intimacy.
Yep.
And like no kissing, nothing involved. And it's just like, well, if that's been the trend, there's probably some disconnection there. And you need to find ways to find that connection back with your spouse and be playful. Like, when's the last time you came home with some flowers? And if you're thinking
a card,
just a simple card or a handwritten note. Handwritten note is free $99. Because I know someone's like, well, I can't afford flowers. Okay, well, place it like grocery stores. If you ask them, honestly, if you ask a grocery store, hey, are you going to discount any of these flowers or throw them away? Are you going to throw any of these flowers away? Can I buy them at a discount? Guess what they will do?
They'll likely just do it.
They might even give them to you.
Yeah.
Some places, like Kroger, sometimes we'll just be like, yeah, you know what?
Just take them.
Just take them. These are fine. You're right. Yeah. Or they'll be like, mark them down to like 3 cents and you get a dozen.
Cool.
And they're not like beautiful, perfect bouquet of flowers, but who cares? They're like, they're a little wilted. Okay. You know what I mean? Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Or pick some flowers if the weather is right in wherever you live. If you're in Florida, you have that luxury. San Diego, you have Texas right now. Everything's dead.
Mm-hmm.
But just find ways to make it fun and then also have a conversation with your significant other and say, hey, honey, we haven't been intimate in, over 30 days and, I feel disconnected, and I was just wondering, is there something that I've done wrong that's caused us to not be intimate? Like, I know you're tired, I know you're exhausted, I know our schedules aren't lining up, but this is kind of a big deal for us being married.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a hard conversation. That's going to be awkward.
It's brutal.
But you got to have the conversation. You have to have the conversation. You have to address the problem, and again, find ways to take ownership of this. What have you done to cause this? And it might be you simply thinking back to like these things I just said, the silly, funny little things. You're like, man, I don't know the last time that I've ever just kissed my wife or loved on my wife or given her flowers or given her a card or wrote her a note, walk by like slap her butt. You know what I mean? Like I do all these things in front of my kids because one, I love my wife. She's hot. I'm attracted to her. And also I want my kids to also see that. Like that's a healthy thing in a relationship when you're married.
When you're married.
Yeah. When you're married.
I don't think a guy running by and slapping one of your daughter's butts if they were dating would go over well in the Dinnell household.
Definitely not in my house if I was there. And definitely not just with my girls in general. Cora might break your arm.
Yeah.
Cora will break your arm.
I'm so stoked to get them on.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Yeah. It's going to be fun.
But to your point, like one of the things that is often overlooked is that so much of the intimacy that we want physically in our relationship comes from an outpouring of the spiritual intimacy that we have, not just with our father, but with our spouse, right? Like I talked about the devotion that Kirsten and I do. It's free. It's on the YouVersion app.
What's the name of that so people can do it?
Yeah, let me look it up because it's awesome. It's once a week, and my favorite thing about it is the questions that it asks, because all of the questions are pertinent, but it's not me asking the questions. It's called A Marriage Devotion by Jimmy. Let me see if I can get his full name. But it's not me asking the questions. It's the devotion that asks the questions. And this week, Jimmy Evans. This week, the question was...
Jimmy Evans has some great marriage stuff.
He's great, yeah. In what area of your marriage do you sometimes react in fear instead of faith? Talk about ways that your wife, or talk with your wife about ways you can come alongside her and help her replace her fear with faith in God. Okay. Those aren't questions that we would ask naturally. Those aren't questions that come up in premarital counseling.
No.
Those are things that like happen when you're engaged in this thing. The other thing I think is that there is a special piece of marital intimacy when we're talking about physical marital intimacy that opens us up. And there is, on each side of it, is the heart intimacy that we want, right? But it's a balance. So what we found out of my wife is, I wish I knew the name of the book. She's reading a book about biblical sexuality for women with some other women in our church. And one of the things that it points out is that like women crave emotional intimacy, right? And men, we don't often give that. Like they want to talk. However, after we're much like our guard is down, we've been vulnerable, now we'll talk.
Yeah.
Most women want that before because that's what helps them build intimacy, right? They feel that closeness and then they're willing to engage. Whereas men, a lot of times we need that engagement and then we're willing to like have the conversation. But in order for both parties to really feel close and satisfied in that is that we're each going to have to give on one side of it. And so along with the, what's the last thing you've done for your wife? Have you done a handwritten note? And there's a guy named John Ruling wrote a book called A Giftology that essentially like a handwritten note. If you're going to spend less than $25 on a gift.
We talked about this before.
Yeah, write a note, right? So that a lot of times what women need in order to engage is because they don't feel close to us. And maybe, this last 30 days, she's not thinking about it because she hasn't felt close to you for the last 90. And it's only in the last 30 that she's like starting to shut down.
Yeah.
So, having the conversation, hey, this is how I'm feeling, what I would like us to be intimate again. I think maybe that there's something that I've done that made you feel like I'm putting distance between us. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And then sit and freaking listen.
Yeah.
Don't talk,
shut up
just
and
listen. Because she'll have stuff. And there's a lot of that where you have to like quote, just like take your medicine. And you know what? Yeah, you may have a reason that you did all these things. There might be a defense for it, but that's not going to change the way that she feels.
Never. It's not going to work for you.
No, and that's it. And if you want to have a conversation about some of that stuff later, like bring it up later.
Yeah. And I would, this might seem extreme, but whatever, it's your marriage that you're trying to work on and improve.
Yeah.
When your wife is sitting there talking to you, take notes.
Yeah.
I would have literally a notepad, not on your phone, so it doesn't look like you're.
Oh my gosh, no,
that's
terrible.
Show the notepad on your phone and say, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna write down some of the things that you're saying so that I can be intentional about fixing these things."
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yep. And touch her hand.
Yeah.
Hold her leg. Something where you are like physically connecting with her while she is talking to you about this stuff.
That's good too.
And that creates another level of intimacy where she feels like, hey, you know what? He's really paying attention to what I have to say. Yeah. And you'll notice that opens up a lot of doors, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Winky face.
And then maybe shut some of the doors. And at the end, just rip your shirt off and establish your male dominance.
That's exactly right.
And pick her up. And just be like, hey.
Shave her name into your chest hair and then just show her how much you love her. Yep. All right.
That's funny.
Hey, when are you going to compete again in the Jiu-Jitsus? This is one of my favorite questions.
I'm going to shut down this Q&A session. No, I've gotten that. So I talked about it at the beginning of last year on Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, and I failed to actually make it happen. But, this year I was talking with, actually in December, I was talking with Formiga about, just this next year, I want to be more intentional with training jiu-jitsu and competing and doing. And so the reason why I talked to him about it is to make it real.
Right.
Because I could just go about my year and do my same training because I'm going to get super busy and I'm not going to make it a priority. But now my professor knows.
Yeah, now you got accountability.
I have accountability. And we had a birthday party for him the other day, and I was sitting there talking with my buddy Pedro about it, and who is like I think he's still ranked number 1 in the world for his weight in no-gi jiu-jitsu. He's on the Brazilian Olympic wrestling team. He's insane with his jiu-jitsu, just absolutely insane. His brother Joao is just incredible with jiu-jitsu as well, top ranked guy as well. Actually, I think like there might be a match between Joao and Gordon Ryan this year.
Really?
Yeah. Which is going to be insane.
Come on, Joao.
Yeah.
You can beat him.
He
dyes his hair.
Joao's a big dude.
No,
in that picture,
you have to beat him in Gordon Ryan's weight
the
class.
picture I sent you, he was the super tall. That's Joao. He trains. Like him and Formiga are best friends and they're business partners, back in the day. But anyways, and so I was just because he was like, "Hey brother, how are you? How have you been training? When are you going to compete?" And I'm like, "Wow, it's funny you asked this." And I'm like, "Dang it!" So we started talking, and he starts like naming off tournaments. He's like, "Oh, you're going to sign up for this one?" And I'm like, "I don't." And I'm like, "Okay, hold on. You know what? Instead of me making excuses, let me look at my calendar." And I was like, I could sign up for that one, but I'd literally be flying in the day before back from a work thing, going and do it. And then I started making that excuse, and then I realized like because of what I get to do at Echelon Front, that's pretty much going to be the situation for anything. Like I'm not going to have a full week here. And it's just, I also understand like when I do compete, it is what it is. It's just like me going to the gym. I might win, I might lose. I don't care. I just want to compete because I know it's the right thing that I need to be doing. And, it's like, it's funny because there are guys that like, okay, hey, I have this tournament coming up. And then they're starting like this training camp for a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I'm like, I'm just happy if I could make it one day a week and then catch a second one occasionally as a private, with the lessons. So to answer that question, I don't have any dates set. Formiga, and because at the end of that dinner, Pedro told Formiga, he's like, "Hey, JP's going to sign. He's doing this tournament." And Formiga was like, "Oh yeah, it really happened." I got kind of like uncomfortable and be like, not having somebody else, I'm not talking to somebody else about competing before you, professor, but he was all happy. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I really have to look at the schedule. And even for me, goes like, "Oh, that would be a good one for you." And it was cool because they're talking about like, hey, there's some local ones, like do these different local ones and then escalate. There's an escalation of the different types. And then, at the end of next year, like if I'm able to go to Worlds and compete in Worlds or something, something like that, it would be cool. But immersion camp's always during that same time frame also. So I don't know if I'd be able to do that this next year because we also have immersion camp and then immersion camp only for law enforcement.
Oh,
there's a following week that's literally only.
That's cool.
It's literally only for active law enforcement, and you got to show up with all your gear and a training weapon.
That's sick.
Oh, it's gonna be gangster.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I don't know what my commitments are to that because also Echelon Front we're doing some leadership training with the with the law enforcement as well. So just trying to figure that all out. But I will compete. I don't have a date yet. And here's the deal. When I have a date, we will talk about it on a podcast and we'll make it a real thing.
So do you think that there's a target on you? Because I did not talk about any, like even the guys that I trained with didn't know when I was going to compete in at different levels of competition. Like I told nobody because early on in my career as a bodybuilder, because I worked with Team Impact, that there were people who were specifically training to beat me. That's and then crazy. Later would come back and I won one competition of the several that I competed in, and I won it I got second at the competition, ended up winning it on a technicality, right? So like after the show, but anyway, they were like as a badge of honor that they beat me, even though like I wasn't one of the athletes that was on stage. I was an office guy. The fact that I was associated with them for these other folks was a big, like huge badge of honor. And so since then, since I was a teenager, I've stopped telling people when I was competing and what competitions I was doing because not that I didn't mind the pressure or any of that stuff, but I didn't want the nonsense of it and the extra noise when I was trying to focus and train.
That's interesting.
Do you think that there's a target, not just because of the Navy SEAL background and that you're training with Formiga and the podcasts and the Echelon Front stuff, like all of that works together? There's going to be do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I go to jiu-jitsu tournaments just to watch buddies and I get stopped, like for people to take pictures and talk, because I know because I work with Jocko and, because
Right.
of Origins, that documentary that they did.
Yeah,
and
which is sick.
everything
And
else.
so many wonderful comments.
I know.
I'm going to start reading those again.
So, I would say there probably definitely is, which I'm fine with. Like, again, it's all right. It's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's cool. And that's what's really cool about the sport of jiu-jitsu is, you're shaking hands before and afterwards for the most part. There's never animosity. Like, it's not like MMA where guys are all hyped up to fight each other. Now,
Right.
there is some of that hype that Gordon Ryan's brought to jiu-jitsu by
for
stirring
sure.
the pot, but he's also getting paid unlike anybody else. And he's also increased the payment that people now get for competing jiu-jitsu because he has changed the game.
He has.
And I just that's not me. That's not my personality. I don't like that stuff.
Right.
I did a little bit of it back in the day because it was genuine. Because me and this other guy hated each other.
Right.
And we ended up fighting. And then afterwards, guess what? We were good to go.
Yeah.
It was so
That's
funny.
it. That's the way that men typically work.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was never like this. It wasn't this show for afterwards. But anyways, it was. Sorry, what was I saying? I think there is. I did the Waco Open over a year ago, last December, not this recent December, but the December prior.
December of 22.
Yes. Yeah. And I lost that match. I lost my first match. In the absolute, I ended up doing the absolute because nobody was in my weight class.
Naturally.
There was a few people, and then there's nobody there, and then I do the absolute, and I was up. I was actually beating this guy, and then freaking got, instead of just standing and stopping his like takedown attempts, and I was literally up on an advantage and up on points because I got a takedown on him, and got sloppy and tried for like another trip sweep on him, and he was a college wrestler, and he freaking just blasted takedown, and so cool. Now it's 2-2 with me having an advantage, and but I had broken ribs going into that tournament, and I had re-broke the finger that has spiral fracture that morning when I was there. And so I had it all taped up. And when he blasted that takedown on me and my freaking landed on my ribs, I was just like, "Whoa." And I had like the guard defense of Helen Keller, man. Like I couldn't do anything, man.
Do you roll with your eyes open?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just close my eyes and just kind of flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he passed. I re-guarded, and then he ended up passing and just held side control. And he's such a big, strong dude. I couldn't literally do anything. I couldn't re-guard.
Sucks.
And then I have this one roll sweep that I get on everybody at least once. I'll get it on everybody at least once.
Right.
Once you figure it out, like if you're high level jiu-jitsu, you'll stop it. If not, I'll keep getting it until like I actually show you what I'm doing, and then you can figure out how to stop it.
Right.
And I was literally in the middle of that roll, getting ready to roll him, and then the time went off. So I lost. The guy beat me fair and square. And that was the one that we were talking about. I had bronchitis and pneumonia also.
Yep.
I didn't know that until I went to the doctor the next day, and I'm like, he's like, "Do you have really bad bronchitis and pneumonia?" And so I went into that just like with the deck stacked against me, and I'm not taking away from this guy's jiu-jitsu. This guy's bro. he was very good. Was very, very strong, really good jiu-jitsu, and he went on. And I was watching the other guys, and so the next day I show back up to do no-gi, and I'm banged up, man. Mm-hmm. I'm like freaking banged up pretty bad, like. And for me, he goes like, "No." He's like, "You don't need to compete, man." He's like, "If you really, really want to," he's like, "Okay, but you there's a good risk of you getting more injured, especially no-gi, because it's a lot faster,
Yeah.
And so I was just like watching the match, and so I told them, I was like, "All right, I'm not going to compete," and I was like, "You're going to pull myself for injuries or whatever." And they're like, "All right, cool." Like, hey, which is cool because the IBJJF was like, "All right, get healthy. We'll see you at the next one." And I was like, "All right, thank you." And anyway, so I'm like watching the guys in my division, the purple belt guys, roll. And man, I think the guy's name is Joshua something. Dang it! Anyway, he just got his brown belt. But I was watching, and he like saw me sitting there watching, and he goes, He's like, "You're not competing?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Dang, I was looking forward to us going against each other today." And I'm like, "Okay." cool. Super nice guy.
Yeah,
and then when he got his brown belt, I made a comment. I'm like, cool, I can avoid butt kickings from you for at least the next year or two before I get my brown belt.
That's awesome.
Because we're the same age division, same weight.
Yeah.
Dude's a freaking stud. Josh. I'm drawing a blank on his actual last name. But anyways, not sure if he listens to this or he just knew me from Jocko stuff. But it was, so I would say probably. But again, it's like, all right, cool, bring it. I hope you're training hard because when I decide to compete, like I promise you, like I'm going to go out there and give you everything I have.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be everything I have, and it might be good and it might not be good. I don't know. Depends on what level that they're at, but I do want to do it just to get back into that fun of it. You know, as we wrap this up, you know, one of my buddies, Weston, who's a black belt at 5 under Formiga as well. He was talking the other day. He's like, man, all these guys like talk about competing, but they don't want to compete. He's like, it's just because they're scared of the competition mode.
Yeah.
He goes, because he's like, dude, a competition. He's like, all you're doing in a competition is what we do here at 5 on a noon class. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And he wasn't calling me out, but he was just talking in general to like some other guys that had said that they were going to compete, but never did. But they're literally training 4 to 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of time or anything. It was literally them just not wanting to go out there and compete, which there's a very real stress to that. If you know,
for sure,
you know, so you got to learn to get over that stress, harness those feelings that you have, and just go out there and have fun.
You need to do it at least once.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are some gyms that require it at every belt before you can get promoted, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Any final thoughts you got or questions?
Dude, I love our Q&A sessions.
I do too.
I think they're a ton of fun. I really want to, you know, as we've talked around all of this stuff, it's encouraging me to maybe get back into jits. Mm-hmm. But for me to do that, I'm going to have to take one of the gis that I have and just rip all the patches off of it, because the school that I used to go to, and then their affiliates, man, it's not a place I want to be associated with anymore. Well, I'll just leave it at that. But
I might know somebody that has access to gis.
Yeah. So, but I'm super stoked about the potential. Kirsten asked me the other day. She's like, "Hey, do you think you're going to want to train jiu-jitsu again?" And and her parameters were, she's like, you know, as long as you don't think it'll become an idol, because I know my diminutive stature may not let people in on this, but I am hyper competitive. Mm-hmm. And if there is an area in my life where I can be competitive, I will let it drive me and move everything else to the side. So especially now with the family stuff and all that, I gotta weigh that in. But I think we hit on a lot of those questions for me. So I think I'm good.
Cool, man.
I appreciate the insight as always.
I love these sessions. You know, as we close it out, just want to thank all the supporters for just all of our listeners for all the support that you guys give. Yep. I mixed up my words there. I appreciate you guys listening, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. I know
we're about to get the JP Dinnell store up with some gear that they can get.
Let's go. That's going to be good, man. If you want to follow us on social media, I'm at JP Dinnell. Lucas is at Lucas Pinckard. He is at Lucaspinckard. If you guys are following Echelon Front, that's awesome. If you're not, get in the game. Follow us at Echelon Front on social media. It's at echelonfront.com, ECHELONFRONT. Our website is echelonfront.com. You can check out what we have going on at Echelon Front. Check out the different instructors that we have, the different events, the musters, the roll calls, the FTXs, the council, the battlefield, all the live events that we have that you can participate on as an individual. And then also, if you want us to come work with your company, let us know how we can help out with that. If also you guys should check out Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. It's a ministry that I'm a part of. We have a podcast called the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu Podcast on Instagram. We are at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA. It's a ministry that I'm part of with Isaac, Stephen, and Josh. The podcast is a big part of the ministry, and then we try to regularly do live events at different gyms. I know when you guys are listening, I misspoke on the last episode with Joel. I said tomorrow is going to be the event. When this this one comes out tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be the event.
Tomorrow will be the event at Highlands Village on the 27th at 55 Highlands Village. It might be at the new location that we have for Highlands Village, which literally is right across the street in a different parking lot, but it's going to be a bigger, newer gym. So we're pretty excited about that. And we have a few things that we're going to be working on with Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu this year, so check that out. Also, I'm a part of a Texas beef company called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Yeah, dog. You want to check out what we have going on, go to littlecattle.co. It's our name as a website, Little Cattle Co. You can follow us on Instagram as well. We have different announcements on just different deals and sales that we have going on. And I think Steven's going to start posting some cooking tips and videos for different ways to cook,
always trust a big boy
smoke.
When it comes to food.
That boy is well fed when it comes to his beef.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to have to reinforce his chair for the podcast.
He's also a really good cook and griller, which is a very good benefit of mine being his best friend. So, and it doesn't help that my wife is a phenomenal cook as well. So the fact that I'm not 350, I have no idea, but we're going to maintain where I'm at. So if you want to check that out, again, littlecattle.co. We deliver in the lower 48, and we can also send boxes of beef to you and your customers and clients, friends, family members. If you want to do that as a gift, like Lucas was saying, hey, if you're going to spend under 25, write them a note. If you're going to spend, over 25, check out Little Cattle Co. and send them a box of Texas beef. I'm sure they'll appreciate that. Even your vegan friends will appreciate that.
Beef is all vegan.
Yes. Also, my partner with my other best friend, Josh Schwarzenberg, with On the Path Printing. We are a t-shirt and apparel printing company based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You can follow us on Instagram. It's just On the Path Printing. And once we get all that stuff up and running, we'll start making posts and videos about what we're doing, who we're supporting, and if we have the ability to partner with you, that would be awesome. And last but not least, we always want to thank Origin and Jocko Fuel for all the support that they have given me over the years, the friendship, the partnership, the opportunity to have a signature energy drink with them is kind of ridiculous, although those are going away.
Womp womp.
But for the right reasons. The flavors are going to stay, but the names are going to change, so you will not be able to order that sour apple sniper in the near future. You might be able to get some of those cans still if you order them now.
Yeah.
I think they have a good amount of those left. But Origin and Jocko Fuel have just been changing the games. What Pete Roberts and his wife Amanda Roberts have done up there in Maine. Started Origin simply just to be able to make Jiu-Jitsu gis 100% American made, because nobody was doing it. Nobody said that they could do it. So he did it, found the last loom in America, brought it back to life, and they have brought the economy back to life up there as well in Maine, and also now in the Carolinas with their different factories as they're growing and expanding. So 100% American made Jiu-Jitsu gis, rash guards. They also have jeans, and they have different types of pants. The pants are ridiculous. The field pant is unreally comfortable. The Versa pant, that is my only my only go-to pant for Echelon Front, travel and speaking. It's unreal.
Oh, it looks sharp, dude.
It's absolutely unreal. Super comfortable. Lightweight. They're good to go. Also hoodies, t-shirts, beanies, wallets, belts, boots. What else am I missing?
I don't know. I got my first pair of Origin boots on the way from the boot outlet.
So, also go to jockofuel.com to check out their supplements, clean supplements, supplements that are actually good for you. It's awesome. The energy drinks are healthy energy drinks that you can drink, and you're not going to feel bad. You're not going to get the jitters, the crash, which is awesome. So I just appreciate their partnership and the friendship that they've always shown me over the years, and the guidance and support that they've also given. So as we close this out, I just want to remind you guys to go out there and just do the work. Like Pete Roberts always says, go out there and get to work. We've talked about putting in one more rep and having that mindset of like, hey, you know what? I haven't done enough. I can always do a little bit more. And whether that's in your marriage, in the relationship with your bosses, the relationship with your spouse, the relationship with your kids, your coworkers, your friends, you can go have one more conversation. You can go put in a little more work so that you know at the end of the day, you did the right things for the right reasons. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 18.